Not everyone has ever seen an entire herd of wild boars trapped inside a single enclosure. I've witnessed it a few times, but never on that kind of scale. That night, when the system tightened, the tension filled the air, anchor lines humming, the net shaking hard. Inside, the herd panicked, trampling over each other and searching for a way out. And it all started from a patch of ground that had been torn apart. The first time I visited Uncle James's farm, things had already gone far beyond control. The grass field was ripped into large patches, the soil turned over heavily, with signs scattered across the entire area. You didn't even need to see the boars. Just looking at the ground told the whole story. A large herd had passed through during the night, and not just once. Neighbors nearby confirmed they kept coming back for weeks, despite every attempt to drive them away. Lights stayed on all night, guards rotated shifts, even multiple deterrent methods were used, but nothing worked. What stood out wasn't just the level of destruction, but how quickly the herd adapted. They returned on schedule, followed the same paths, and grew more confident each time. Once it had gone on that long, the solution couldn't be reactive anymore. It had to shift into a controlled, systematic approach. The next morning, we began setting up the trap early. The netting was carried into the forest, teams worked in sections, each anchor point secured tightly to tree trunks. The work seemed simple, but it demanded precision, because even a small misalignment could render the entire system useless. Once everything was in place, it became completely still. There was nothing left to do but wait for the right moment. The herd wasn't forced into the trap. They followed their own habits, guided by bait and familiarity. The lead boar appeared first, paused to observe, then stepped inside. The rest followed behind, one by one, without the slightest suspicion. Once they started feeding, their alertness gradually dropped. The longer they stayed, the deeper they moved into the center, never realizing the enclosure had already closed around them. The circular trap design worked exactly as intended. There were no blind spots to escape through, no weak points to break. When they sensed something wrong, their only instinct was to run. But in a closed circular space, running only drained their energy faster. They kept circling, crashing into the net, sending strong vibrations through it, yet the entire structure held firm. Every charge only tightened the net further, never weakening it. There were no gaps, no break points. No matter how they struggled, rammed, or tried to break free, it all led to the same outcome: exhaustion. That was when I understood the core principle of this system. Once the entire herd steps into the circle, the chance of escape is almost gone. Not because the trap is complex, but because it uses the herd's own behavior against them. The entire process was monitored through screens. It wasn't fear, it was intense focus. As notifications began appearing continuously from different points, we knew the system was working exactly as planned. Not just one trap, but multiple locations were reporting results. The feeling in that moment was a mix of tension and relief, as the long chain of damage was finally brought to a stop. What came next followed a set procedure. Each animal was controlled and transported, the numbers so large we had to rethink the logistics. But what mattered more was the outcome. The farm was no longer being destroyed every night, and the people living there could finally sleep peacefully again. On the drive back, in the quiet of the vehicle, I realized that success didn't come from a single moment, but from a process of observation and patience. Control doesn't come from the size of the trap, but from the precision of timing and execution. If you've ever faced a situation like this, share your experience. And if you found this useful, don't forget to follow for more real-world strategies like this.
Yeah. The video has really changed how we
bad time.
A call came in early in the morning, carrying exhaustion and a sense of helplessness. The landowner said the situation had spiraled out of control. The wild boars had been returning night after night, and each time they left, the field were left in worse condition. When the control team arrived, what stood out most was not just the extent of the damage, but the overwhelming sense of frustration. There was no time to hesitate. The first step was to survey the entire area, reading every trace to understand how the herd was moving.
Gotta protect it.
Probably 100 by 100 where these hogs have been in. And they hadn't been in this field.
Well, this is really fresh rooting task. And if, say, the grass...
The land was quickly divided into 3 key points. These were the main routes the boars frequently used. There was no room for chance. If only one direction was controlled, the rest of the herd would become alert. And once that happened, every plan that followed would become far more difficult. So the strategy was not to wait for a single trap to work, but to see which direction would be triggered first. Close to midnight, the first signal appeared. A small group moved into the outer trap zone. They behaved naturally, with little caution, perhaps because the area had already been heavily trampled before. When the first mechanism was triggered, the sharp sound of metal shattered the silence. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The animals inside reacted strongly, but the locking system held firm. The control team quickly moved in and handled the situation during the night. It was an opening step, but not the most critical one. Less than 30 minutes later, movement was detected at the second point. This time, the group was larger and more cautious. A few individuals stepped in, then paused, turning back as if ready to retreat. If the entire group had withdrawn into the forest, the opportunity would have been lost. In that tense moment, a large individual moved forward. Calm, unhurried, it stepped into the center, and the others gradually followed. When the mechanism was triggered, the entire steel frame shook violently. The sound carried farther, signaling a much stronger reaction than before. The control team had to act quickly before the disturbance spread. Two points had been secured, but one area remained silent. That was the most concerning part. The third point lay deeper inside, near a primary movement route. After the first two traps were triggered, there was no signal from the zone. The prolonged silence was more unsettling than the earlier metallic noise. The herd might have scattered, or perhaps most of them were waiting further out. A decision was made. Hold position and do not intervene.
Just back up.
Near dawn, just as everything seemed to be over, the final signal appeared. A large group was moving into the third area. They did not rush in, but circled cautiously, constantly observing. A manual trigger was too risky. If it failed, the entire herd would disappear and might never return. Time seemed to slow. As the first light emerged, the automatic system activated. The gate closed smoothly, firm enough to contain the entire group, yet gentle enough to avoid panic. The control team did not approach immediately. Only after full daylight did they return to inspect. Most of the herd had been secured within the third zone. Only then did the true scale of the problem become clear. This was not a race of numbers. It was a process of behavioral adjustment. Observation, patience, and understanding herd psychology were the decisive factors.
Yeah, like you just they do none of that.
In another area, a residential security system recorded movement in the middle of the night. There was no loud noise, only a subtle vibration from the alert system. Camera footage showed a group of wild boars moving in formation, advancing in an orderly line. This was not random behavior. It was evidence of a well-established threat. The herd stopped at the boundary between the natural zone and the residential area. But this time, the timing was precise. The gate closed quietly. The entire group was contained within the control zone, completely separated from the residential area. No noise, no panic, and no one in the neighborhood realized what had taken place that night.
We got a bigger.
Ag turn in here.
Recently, in many areas of Texas, the wild boar population has increased rapidly, leading to more intense competition and conflicts with other wildlife.
On the way back.
They frequently compete for food, engage in direct confrontations, and raise the risk of disease outbreaks, especially African swine fever. As the population grows beyond control, the herds begin expanding their range, moving closer to livestock farms and residential areas. Their dense presence not only causes serious damage to agriculture, but also increases the risk of disease transmission to domestic animals and even impacts humans. These pressures quickly accumulate, forcing authorities to implement large-scale control measures to restore balance. Because of the growing disease risk and expanding intrusion range, systematic surveys are carried out using infrared cameras and tracking devices to identify where the herds hide and their habitual travel routes. Based on the collected data, control teams quickly mark key points frequently used by the herd to install large circular trapping systems. Every step is carefully calculated, as even a small mistake could cause the entire herd to disappear and become more cautious. Heavy T-posts are driven deep into the ground, forming a wide circular enclosure exactly at the pre-identified location. Thick steel mesh panels are stretched and connected into a closed structure, with every joint tightly secured to ensure maximum stability. The sound of metal echoes across the quiet fields. From the outside, it looks like a simple fence, but in reality, it is a system designed to hold the entire herd at the critical moment.
This is the next part. You see, I got to put the outer frame of that.
Once the structure is complete, the preparation enters its final stage. Infrared cameras are installed around the area, mounted on trees or elevated poles to monitor the entire trap zone. Human traces are minimized as much as possible. Then bait is placed. Fermented corn prepared earlier is used to create a strong scent, arranged in a trail leading from outside into the center of the trap. The largest portion is placed at the center, acting as the main attractant that gradually draws the herd deeper inside without noticing the boundaries. When everything is ready, the area returns to silence. Only the faint scent of food lingers in the air. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, sensitive noses begin to pick up the smell. As night falls, the first movement signals appear on the monitoring screen. The wild boar herd has returned. The lead boar steps forward, pausing to observe and smell the surroundings. Behind it, the rest of the herd follows, moving in according to their established pattern. Although naturally cautious, the scent of food dulls their awareness. Guided by the leader, one by one they move deeper inside. There is no suspicion, no hesitation. When the entire herd is fully inside the trap area, the decisive moment arrives. Immediately, the gate system is triggered remotely. A sudden metallic crash shatters the silence of the field. The entire herd falls into panic, charging in all directions and crashing into the steel fence. The ground is torn apart under their weight and repeated impacts. Larger individuals attempt to break the structure, while smaller ones try to squeeze through, but all efforts fail. There are no gaps, no escape. The chaos continues until exhaustion sets in. As the sun rises, the control team returns to the trap site. By then, the herd is no longer struggling violently as during the night. Many are exhausted, breathing heavily after hours of attempting to escape. Some remain standing, alert and reacting to every movement. But seeing the entire herd contained at once, the farmers can finally breathe a sigh of relief. It is the moment they realize the plan has truly worked. This place has been repeatedly devastated by wild boars. Fields are torn apart, fences collapse, and the damage returns season after season. Small traps only catch a few individuals, while the rest of the herd quickly learns to avoid them and becomes even more aggressive. We realized we could no longer deal with the problem in a fragmented way. Together with local farmers, a collective decision was made to build a large trap strong enough to capture the entire herd at once. This was not just a solution, it was a turning point to finally end the long cycle of destruction. While the sunlight was still strong, we began constructing the trap. Heavy steel panels were carried out and assembled into a sealed circular structure. Every joint was tightened carefully, and each post was driven deep into the dry ground. The sound of hammers striking metal echoed sharply through the still air. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a cold steel frame. But in reality, it was a massive lock, waiting for the exact moment to close. Once the structure was complete, we installed infrared cameras around the area, mounting them high on tree trunks to monitor every path leading inside. Everything was prepared quickly, but with absolute precision. The final step was baiting. Bags of corn were opened, releasing a sweet scent that drifted through the late afternoon air. We scattered the corn to form a faint trail, leading from the outside deep into the trap. Step by step, the herd would be guided inward without realizing it. When everything was done, the area returned to silence. Only the lingering scent of corn remained, and somewhere in the forest, sharp noses had already begun to pick up the familiar smell. As night fell, the forest seemed completely still. But that silence brought no sense of safety. Then, movement appeared on the screen. The wild boars had arrived. The lead boar stepped forward, moving slowly, sniffing the air as it advanced. Behind it, others emerged one by one, different sizes, forming a line heading toward the trail. Wild boars have strong instincts and sharp awareness of their surroundings. But tonight, hunger and the scent of corn overpowered any sense of danger. Led by the dominant boar, the entire herd moved in without hesitation. When the last one crossed the boundary, we confirmed the whole herd was inside, and at that exact moment, the gate was triggered. The sound of metal crashing echoed sharply, shattering the silence of the forest. Instantly, everything turned chaotic. The herd panicked, rushing in all directions, slamming into the steel walls, colliding with each other in desperation. The ground was torn apart under their force. The metal structure shook violently. The strongest boars tried to break through, but it was useless against the carefully engineered barrier. Some smaller ones attempted to climb or jump over, but the height of the fence held them back. Panic spread through the entire herd as they realized there was no escape. Before dawn broke, we approached the trap. The scene had completely changed from the night before. The boars were no longer thrashing violently. Many were exhausted, breathing heavily. Some stood still, nearly motionless from fatigue. Yet their instincts still pushed them to react at any movement. More than 20 wild boars had been captured in a single attempt, a result that once seemed impossible. For the first time, the farmers could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Before opening the trap, the entire structure was checked one last time. Every joint, every lock was carefully inspected to ensure there were no risks. The team observed the herd's behavior to avoid unexpected situations. As the handling process began, panic flared up again, but every step followed strict safety procedures. Specialized equipment was used to minimize risks for both people and nearby livestock. And in that moment, everyone understood, success did not come from luck. It came from choosing the right strategy from the very beginning and seeing it through to the end. No decision was made immediately. For nearly 3 weeks, the farm owner simply observed in silence and endured. Night after night, as darkness fell, the wild boars returned. No loud noises, no warning signs. They moved in like shadows, then disappeared, leaving behind fields torn apart and churned into chaos. At first, there were only a few scattered footprints around the edge of the forest. But in a short time, the signs became denser. Rows of crops were uprooted, patches of soil ripped open, and after just a few nights, an entire section of the farm was nearly wiped out. This was no longer random intrusion. It had become a clearly established movement corridor. As the damage began to exceed what could be tolerated, a control plan had to be put into action. But instead of rushing in, everything was done in reverse, stepping back and observing. Wild boars only return when they feel safe, and that very sense of safety would become their weakness. In the first few days, no traps were set. There was only bait. Corn, grain, molasses, and scent attractants were spread evenly each night at the same location. The goal was not to capture them immediately, but to create a habit. As the food source became familiar, the boars began returning more frequently. Then a large trapping system was set up, with bait laid from the outside inward, forming a natural path. There was no force, no sign of anything unusual. Everything was kept exactly as it had been on previous nights, with only one difference: the trigger mechanism was ready. Near midnight, the first movements appeared. One by one, they stepped in, slowly, without suspicion. When the last one entered the central area, the signal was triggered. The gate slammed shut with a sharp, dry sound. In an instant, the entire herd was contained inside. The sound of metal rang out repeatedly. Bodies slammed against the steel frame, dust rising into the air. The chaos lasted for several minutes, then gradually subsided. The first night ended with a clear result. Part of the herd had been controlled. But it did not stop there. In the following nights, other groups continued to appear. A larger herd, including young ones, entered the area without hesitation. This showed that the system was working as intended, not just attracting a single group, but multiple herds sharing the same movement corridor. The number of traps was increased. Each night, a few more individuals were captured. There were no longer massive catches like at the beginning, but it was enough to maintain pressure. Then, on a moonlit night, the largest herd yet appeared. They followed the familiar path, stepping forward without the slightest caution. When the last one crossed the boundary, the mechanism was triggered. The gate slammed down, a metallic crash piercing the stillness. Inside, chaos erupted, then quickly faded as every escape route was sealed. Under the dim moonlight, the entire herd was subdued. It was not a sense of victory, but of relief. After weeks of observation and preparation, the damage had finally been brought under control. The next morning, the work shifted to the handling phase. No longer observation or waiting, but transport.
Golly.
A guided passage was set up, maintaining a safe distance and minimizing stress so the boars could be moved in a controlled direction. The adults, the ones responsible for the most damage, were prioritized first. When everything was over, the farm gradually returned to its quiet state. No more dense footprints, no more patches of land destroyed overnight. But the most important thing was not the number that had been controlled, but how it was done. Not rushed, not random, but observing long enough to act at the right moment. In controlling wild boars, patience is sometimes the deciding factor. Not to wait, but to ensure that when action is taken, it is effective from the very first time.
It was a morning that anyone who has ever worked in agriculture would never easily forget. As the first light of day touched the fields, unusual signs had already become clear. The ground was torn up into large patches, plant roots were ripped out of the dry soil, and dense tracks stretched from the forest edge deep into the cultivated area. These were no longer scattered signs. A herd of wild boars had established a consistent movement pattern and begun systematic destruction. Under that pressure, a control plan had to be implemented immediately. Traditional methods were tested first, but when facing a large herd with a well-defined social structure, capturing individuals one by one proved ineffective. On the contrary, each escape only made them more cautious. The herd began to change its approach, stopping farther away, circling around trap areas, and avoiding any spots with unusual signs. The old tactics were no longer suitable. A completely different approach was required. A larger net trap system was deployed. The space was expanded, the structure became more flexible, and it was sufficient to cover a wide area. However, even when the gate closed during an early morning trigger, the result was still not as expected. Only a single individual was captured. The herd once again demonstrated its remarkable adaptability. At this point, the confrontation was no longer simple. It had become a true battle of wits. The decisive change came when the entire system was relocated to a low, damp area in the eastern section. Here, a large-scale steel structure was erected, measuring up to 4 by 8 meters. Unlike the smaller traps used before, this system was designed to capture the entire herd intact. The bait was carefully selected, using strongly scented food to stimulate the sense of smell of the leading individuals. The acclimatization process continued, but this time without haste. The wild boars were allowed to move freely in and out over several days, gradually developing a sense of safety. As hunger began to outweigh caution, each individual started venturing deeper into the trap area. Large males, weighing over 100 kilograms, with thick skin and muscular bodies, led the herd. They moved slowly but steadily, step by step into the central zone where the food was placed. Then, at a carefully calculated moment, the triggering mechanism was activated. The steel gate snapped shut instantly, blocking all escape routes behind them. Upon approaching the site, flashlight beams revealed multiple pairs of eyes reflecting in the darkness. Low, continuous sounds echoed, not panic, but the alert response of a herd confined in a tight space. However, the system had been securely reinforced. The steel frame, thick mesh, and anchor points all functioned as designed. Every attempt to break free proved unsuccessful. As daylight began to spread, the entire scene became clearer. A full herd of wild boars, from adults to juveniles, was contained entirely within. There were no longer signs of scattering or escape as before. This was the first time the control system had achieved its most critical objective, capturing the herd as a whole rather than isolating individuals. The final phase was carried out immediately afterward. A specialized trailer was brought up to the trap entrance, forming a continuous passage. Barriers were fixed on both sides to ensure a controlled direction of movement. When the gate was opened, the herd had no choice but to move forward along the only available path. The entire process was carried out quickly and under control, removing the entire herd from the cultivated area. The confrontation with wild boars is not simply a matter of strength or numbers. It is a combination of observation, understanding behavior, and choosing the right strategy. When the appropriate method is applied, the result goes beyond mere control. It restores stability to the entire agricultural ecosystem. And on the fields that were once devastated, peace finally returns. In 2018, North German radio reported a reality that left many people stunned. Wild boars had appeared right in the middle of the city, to the point that the police had to step in to stop them. This was no longer a story from distant forests, but a threat that had moved right up to residential areas. In October, in Itzehoe, Schleswig-Holstein, near AM Padschbecken Park, a family that had lived there for 30 years suddenly witnessed a children's playground being torn up by wild boars. During the day, they almost completely disappeared. But once night fell, the entire area became a place where the boars returned to wreak havoc. Fearing that danger could strike at any moment, the family installed cameras to record their activity and also sent a letter requesting government intervention. But when these destructive intruders had already become so used to hiding and then suddenly returning, could humans truly do enough to stop them? Under growing pressure from local residents, the authorities could no longer remain at the stage of monitoring and issuing warnings. A systematic control campaign began to take shape, with careful study of the boars' travel routes, hiding spots, and appearance patterns at different times of day. From the data collected, a series of trapping methods was gradually set up at key locations. In some places, large steel cages were used to hold several animals at once. In others, smaller steel cages were placed along narrow trails to catch individual boars that had split from the herd. In several other areas, fixed control methods were also arranged at points the boars regularly passed through. At this stage, the confrontation was no longer made up of scattered and temporary reactions, but had become a real control operation. Among these methods, small steel cages were prioritized in areas close to homes or in places where individual animals needed to be dealt with quickly. A solid steel frame combined with high-strength metal mesh created an enclosed space where, once the animal stepped in, it had almost no chance of turning back. The one-way door mechanism was simple but clearly effective. When the boar moved in to reach the bait, the door would automatically drop and lock behind it. The more it struggled, the harder it became to escape. When placed correctly along familiar trails or in areas showing signs of digging for food, this type of trap could begin producing results after only a few nights. Thanks to its more compact size, it was also much easier to position in narrow spaces. That was especially important in areas where every control measure had to be not only effective, but also designed to minimize disruption to the daily lives of local residents. In addition, in many situations, simpler solutions still delivered significant results. Some fixed methods continued to be used in suitable areas because they could be deployed quickly, neatly, and without requiring too much equipment. By choosing the right location, taking advantage of a secure anchor point, placing bait, and camouflaging the setup carefully, the entire process could be completed in a short time. The cost was low, but if it was placed in the right spot and adjusted to match the movement habits of the boars, the effectiveness of control could still improve noticeably over time. That flexibility is exactly why these seemingly simple solutions continued to play an important role in the overall control strategy. In reality, large and complex systems were not always the most suitable choice for every hotspot. Sometimes, it was the quickly deployed measures, closely adapted to the terrain and the behavior of the boars, that created the clearest difference in long-term control. No matter which method was used, the final goal remained the same: to restore safety to residential areas and prevent the wild boars from returning to destroy them again. But as the boars continue adapting more effectively to living near humans, will these measures truly be enough to stop this intrusion?
That was a lot of
A silent battle is spreading across the vast fields of Texas, where the boundary between farmland and the wild is gradually fading. Wild boar herds appear unpredictably, but once they enter, they leave unmistakable traces: soil torn apart, crops uprooted, and entire areas destroyed in just a single night. What worries farmers is not only their destructive power, but how quickly they learn and adapt. Traditional control methods are becoming ineffective, forcing farmers to turn to a decisive solution: large-scale traps designed to target entire sounders rather than individual animals. If you're interested in how they protect farms from this growing threat, subscribe to follow whether this solution truly works. The pressure begins with increasingly severe and hard-to-control damage. No longer isolated incidents, wild boar attacks now follow repeated patterns. They return to the same locations, move along familiar paths, and target the most accessible areas. Irrigation systems are destroyed, farmland is disrupted, and recovery costs rise with every season. What was once considered a rare rural issue has now become a standard part of farm management across the state. Beyond physical damage, wild boars also bring serious biological risks. As they move across different areas, they unknowingly become carriers that spread disease. Viruses and bacteria can persist in the environment, attaching to water sources, soil, or feed. This puts livestock operations at risk of infection without clear warning signs. Once an outbreak occurs, the consequences can spread far beyond a single location, affecting entire production systems. The danger escalates when wild boars feel threatened. Mature individuals, especially during breeding season, can react quickly and unpredictably. This makes direct contact extremely risky, not only for farmers but also for control teams.
Yeah.
I got more.
In addition, their presence near roads increases the risk of collisions, leading to property damage and potential injuries. Controlling wild boars is no longer optional. It has become a necessity. In response, large-scale trapping systems are being deployed as a central solution. Unlike traditional small traps, this design focuses on capturing entire herds in a single operation. The structure is typically circular or polygonal, built with strong steel mesh or reinforced metal panels.
Correct position. All right, so
Support posts are driven deep into the ground to ensure stability against the force of multiple animals. The trapdoor is wide enough to allow the entire herd to enter without hesitation. The key difference lies in how the system is operated. Instead of triggering the trap when only a few animals appear, cameras are used to monitor the entire herd. Bait is placed at the center and maintained over several days to create a sense of safety. Only when the entire herd is inside and no individuals remain outside on alert does the operator activate the door remotely. This waiting for the right moment significantly increases the success rate. When the door drops, the entire space instantly becomes enclosed. With no escape route, the herd is contained without the need for chasing or causing panic. The result is not only a large number of animals controlled in a single event, but also a reduced chance for remaining boars to learn and avoid traps in the future. This marks a shift from passive control to a proactive approach, one that more effectively protects crops, maintains balance, and ensures the long-term stability of farms.
Yep. Easy, come on now. Yep. Let's drop that gate. There you go. Oh, get on the bus. There you go. Yep. There you